Support for the Dice Tower comes from listeners like you, and from The Op, also known as USAopoly, and from GameNerds.com. Thanks for your support. The Dice Tower, episode 740.
The biggest surprises of 2021.
Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Geoff is messing with the odds. I have a holiday-themed tale of horror to share. We share our top 10 surprises of 2021, and we finish off the show with an announcement from Tom. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Biggs to my Wedge, Tom Vassell.
Why do you get to be Wedge?
I don't know. Biggs comes first?
Wedge became a general.
Oh, great! That's fantastic.
Wedge became a main character in the extended Star Wars universe.
Sounds good.
Which then was invalidated.
Oh. Well, what happened to Biggs?
Biggs, I don't even remember. No, he died.
Oh. Sorry. Well, he goes on and shows up in a bunch of Final Fantasy games. Biggs and Wedge.
Darth Vader killed him.
Oh.
You're right. Biggs and Wedge are in Final Fantasy. I wouldn't say a bunch. It's in one.
At least one. I think they show up a lot.
Anyway, you know what? This is the weirdest conversation we've had yet. It is episode 740, folks. Biggest surprise of 2021. Now, you may be tuning into this because I said I had a big announcement. I do, but that will be at the end of the episode. So stay tuned, or, well, this is a podcast. You can scroll all the way to the end.
I guess you could, but you'd miss all this other stuff.
You wouldn't hear about all the games and things. And in fact, Eric is feeling pretty good, I'm assuming, since he just got back from PAX.
Well, yes, future Eric has just gotten back from PAX. Past Eric hasn't gone yet and is leaving tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm excited. It's going to be very cool. I have a bunch of meetings to see some new games. I'm actually going to be recording some stuff, so next episode, 742, I'll have some audio from PAX. Fingers crossed, at least, that we can record in the space. But it's going to be a good time, and I'm looking forward to it.
You should have meetings to see new games. Like what kind of games? Can you tell us?
Ooh, I get to take a look at the new, the Funko Jurassic World Legacy game.
So I actually refuse to do that.
Really?
Because I want to play it.
That's true. I think it's going to be little more than an unboxing. I don't think they're going to reveal much.
I don't even want to see that. I want to see it when it comes in.
Okay. Well, I can't wait that long. It's like seeing the trailer, I think. That I really want to see the trailer. Oh, and I get to see the new Jerry Hawthorne game, which is called Familiar Tales. And I'm very excited about that as well.
I think I did the same. I saw that real briefly at Board Game Geek Con, and I still kind of went by that. You know, there's something when it comes to these story games, I want to experience them for the first time. I don't want to know anything about them anymore.
I mean, I agree to a point. What I am excited about
you can't control yourself.
Again, I can't control myself, but I want to hear Jerry's, because I get the meetings with Jerry, and I want to hear his design perspective, which is always fascinating with his games. So I'm excited about that as well.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens from that. Folks, if you are listening to this, it is in the middle of the Dice Tower Winter Spectacular, which all sorts of things are coming on. And in fact, so this is going to be weird because I'm doing my biggest surprise top 10 in this episode, but also doing it live on video today.
Ooh, synergy.
Oh, no. Or is it tomorrow? I think it's today.
I think it's today. I looked at the schedule. Yeah.
So one of them's going to spoil the other. Sorry, but I'm doing one with Eric and one with Z and Mike. But my lists should be about the same on each one.
Well, if you listen to them at the same time, then you can sync it up, and then you'll get like
will work.
Tom, Eric, Z. It'll work out.
Eric and Z in unison say, "Wrong, Vassal."
That wasn't a surprise at all.
Now, on the podcast itself, we will not be doing our best games of 2021, our top 10 games, but that will be done during that Winter Spectacular, and Eric will be doing one there too. So
Yes. What day? It didn't say on the schedule. I was looking for it in big, bold text. It wasn't on there.
Well, it might be on there now. I don't know. And that's because I'm not going to say it was your co-host's fault who did that top 10 with you and just didn't know how to get it to us.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking over the schedule right now, and, I don't see it here at all.
Oh,
so
great. Well,
it's not on the schedule.
But we've teased it, so it has to happen.
Yeah, it's the truth of it. I'm sure it's on here somewhere. The guys are going to be real pleased tomorrow when I tell them tomorrow that it hasn't made it to the schedule yet. They're going to love that. In fact, I think, oh man, they're going to be so pleased when I tell them there's another top 10.
Delighted to hear it.
But there is a lot of top 10s going on in this, folks. In fact, let me count them up for you. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. That's almost as many as Eric and I did this entire year.
That's a lot. Wow.
And there's probably more than that, and I'm just missing it. So, yeah, come and join us. It's already been going on for a day plus.
And if you can't, join the Spectacular live, you can catch those videos later on the Dice Tower channel on YouTube.
We've also announced dates for the Dice Tower Retreat, and you can find that out online, dicetowerretreat.com. And Dice Tower West tickets are closing at the beginning of February. Ooh. Dice Tower Cruise is about full. Dice Tower East, I've been making plans for that. There's a lot going on. So I'm not going to keep driving this home, folks, but I do want to mention every once in a while, if you want to know what's going on in the Dice Tower, we do a bi-weekly newsletter where I kind of send out some information on what's going on. So we don't give your email address out to anybody. Speaking of that, Eric, I heard a good life hack that I plan to start using.
Sure. Okay.
They said when you send your email to a website, for a middle name, put the name of the website. So
okay.
like you would be like Eric Google Summerer.
Sure.
That way, if you get spam from somebody, you know which website sold it to them.
Sneaky.
I like it. That
is sneaky.
So for us folks, it would be Eric Dice Tower Summerer.
That's what people call me anyway.
Alrighty, well, that's all that stuff. Let's jump into some games. We just got a couple games here for you each, but there's some big ones. There's some big ones, and folks, you need to stay tuned because I'm just gonna whet your appetite. Soon we're gonna have the scariest tale of horror ever.
Good, yes, indeed. Well, why don't I kick things off? One of our favorite games of the last couple of years was a little puzzle game called Project L. It came from a publisher called Boardcubator, and we were you and I both very impressed with this game. So I was very excited to get their big, very large, heavier game called Space Race. This is about the race to the cosmos, various countries, polities working to put people into space, build their engines, and sort of get ahead in the global race to be a power outside the Earth's bounds. At its heart, Space Race is a card drafting and tableau building game. The cards all come in different suits. There's 4 different suits, and they all have, most of them anyway, have actions on them that have arrows that are colored in those 4 suits. A particular, like the blue suit, usually has blue arrows, but not always. It might have a red or a yellow arrow, or maybe one of each color arrow. It could trigger with all those different things. And you are, each turn of the game, going to seed some of these cards from your hand into this drafting tableau. And then you're going to choose one of your action cards in those different suits. So you say, I'm gonna play red this turn. And those action cards also have drafting numbers, turn order numbers on them. So face down, you choose one of those. Everybody reveals, and you're like, oh, well, you and I are doing red, and then Tom over there is going to do blue. Usually that action has you drafting cards from that array in the center of the board and then triggering all of, if I was choosing red, all of the red arrows on all of the cards that I have in front of me. And some of those actions can be triggered every round, and some are a one-time use. But the more red arrows I have in front of me, the more stuff I'm going to get to do on this one activation. And that involves drafting more cards and putting my meeples out on projects and completing those projects. And it's sort of an area control aspect to some of these areas of the board. And the more efficiently you can do that, the more stuff you can do. And you continue this for 7 rounds as you build more and more of these projects and complete more of your tableau pieces. And whoever is the farthest along on a time track that's actually a victory point track wins the game at the end.
That's a very, very succinct description. I'm very impressed.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I haven't gotten to the pointy bits yet because that description was very, very smooth. The game, however, is not. I love the theme. I love the production. I like the art. There's some really cool illustrations and all of this. It all looks like a really slick package. The way that cards get added to the tableau for drafting is kind of weird. You throw cards in, everybody throws cards into a face-down pile. They get shuffled up, and only a couple are revealed before you have to decide what action you're going to take on the turn. And then the rest come out. So you may know that a blue card is coming out, but those blue cards might not show up before everybody else gets to choose their actions. Or vice versa. You might throw a blue card in there and it shows up as one of the first cards. And this, just even understanding how that all works, I've probably confused you just by saying how it works, was a significant barrier to us understanding the game. So once you figure that out, then you start getting cards into your tableau and you're hoping to synergize them. Some of those actions trigger every round, some of them don't. And so some of them, if you trigger them, you can no longer use that action on that card. And they tell you to cover it up with another card. But what if it's the first card you have in your tableau? Then you have, put your thumb on it for a while? That's a little pointy.
Yes.
There's just... The whole thing sort of slows down as you have to work your way through the mechanisms of it. And while it feels good to get synergies running and see things trigger in cool ways and score a bunch of points, if you can't get the cards to make all of that work just because they don't show up in the tableau, then it can be very frustrating. And you're sitting there waiting for other people to make their decisions as they're looking at all of the cards and all of the icons. This has a similar problem to Race for the Galaxy. Where you've got these symbols that mean something and they all follow a certain pattern in how these actions are described, but when you're first looking at them, you have to decode the terminology for your discard pile is called your lab and your tableau is called your headquarters. That's not headquarters, it's your facility or something. It's all these specific terms instead of tableau and personal discard and all of that. You have to maneuver through all of this stuff to make it all work. And my fear, despite the production, which is excellent, it's got little mini spaceships, rockets that are your movers and pawns. Despite all of the stuff that really works here, those pointy bits are going to make it really hard. It's got a significant barrier to entry, and I fear that that's going to not... This isn't going to last because people are going to bounce off it too much. So Space Race, while I can enjoy the mechanisms, I fear that it's not going to land because of those pointy bits.
I feel, so I'm curious. I've heard a lot about the card game version of this. I wonder if the card game version would be better. It feels like they added too much stuff. The mission cards, the whole little area control spot on the bottom, I think those could have both been cut and I wouldn't notice. And it's not tight. I guess that's what you're saying. You're trying to find a new terminology here. Pointy, is that our new thing?
Yeah.
Or is this an analogy because the big space... Did you play the big one with big spaceships for...
I didn't play with the big because there's an expansion that makes a Cold War, and it's got huge rockets like the Saturn V and the Russian equivalent.
Those are really big. I'm just talking about the normal size spaceships.
We did the normal ones. We didn't use those expansion, not scenarios, but cards for the expansion because only two of the players, the Russians and the U.S., get the special ones, and we were playing more players and didn't want to give some players the extra stuff and others not.
Got it. The thing is, there's too much stuff, and it doesn't really matter. A big, giant deck of cards with multiple characters. You can have Stephen Hawking or other characters, and they don't really feel like they're those characters. They're trying to do the whole... And we'll come back to this big deck thing in a bit here. The big deck needs to be all good. So... Yeah. I like the idea of this game. I think the space race itself is fascinating history. The idea of building a spaceship is cool. And this game looks great.
It does.
But it's so fiddly. I just can't really recommend it for that reason. This was kind of a disappointment to me. Because when I first saw it, I was like, ooh. And then when I saw it was an engine builder, I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
And I don't dislike it. It just feels... Eric's right.
Well, good. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just wrap that up and put in your pocket because you ain't getting another one this episode. Actually, maybe you will. I don't know. All right. So the first game I want to talk about here is Canopy. Now, this is a really pretty game. Well, I got like a Kickstarter version, so I don't know what the normal version looks like. But... this game is from Weird City Games. Tim Eisner is the designer. He did Grim Forest, Tidal Blades, and Wonderland's War. So he does a lot of those bigger games.
Yep.
And I feel like if Tim Eisner has a tick, it's he likes to take a really cool game and he's like, and just one more thing. Because that's how I feel about his games for the most part. If you play Tidal Blades and Wonderland's War, they're both very good games. But they could be great. They just feel like they had one too many things added to them. Okay. They're fine games.
Yeah.
But Eric, you play Wonderland's War, right, with me?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, it's fun, but it feels like there's just a little too much in it. So Canopy is one of his smaller games. You're building a rainforest. So that's kind of cool. And in it, you use a drafting system, which Z told me the name of this draft today, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it's called. But there's 1, 2, and 3 cards, and you can look at the 1 card, and if you don't want it, you put it back and add another card from the deck to it. Then you go to the 2 cards, and you look at those, and you can take those, and if you don't want them, you put them back and add a card to them, giving it to your opponent. Because sometimes there's bad cards in this deck, and so you're collecting different cards. You have tree cards that make your trees nice and tall, flower cards that different kinds of flowers or plants. The more you get, the more points you get. Sometimes, like there's ferns. If you have 1 fern, it's worth 0. 2 ferns, now they're worth 2. 3 ferns, back to 0. 4 ferns, they're worth 6 points now. So there's stuff like that. Bromelia, if you have 1, it's 2 points. 2, 7 points. But if you have 3 or more, minus 3 points. So there's a little bit of that in there. There's also fire, which burns down some plants, and there's things that chase away animals. So there's this collection thing. It's good. I really like it. It's a 2-player game. Well, technically, it's 1 to 4 players, but you need multiple copies, which I call balderdash, and companies need to stop doing that.
Yeah.
But it works really well with 2 players. Me and my wife really enjoyed this back and forth. Playing these games, I had a lot of fun. And like I said, I felt like there was just one too many things. Like just a little too many animals. The drafting was a little wonkier than it needed to be. It's gorgeous, Vincent Dutrait artwork. It's one of the games that has some Kickstarter upgrades, and I thought, who wants these? It's weird when you think that. Like, for example, when you finish a tree, there's these little tokens of animals that Vincent Dutrait beautifully illustrated, and you put one of those on a tree to show that it's been scored. Or if you have the Kickstarter upgrade, you have a big chunky wooden brown piece. Why would I use that? Because it's wood?
I guess.
Wood doesn't automatically make it better.
Okay.
I just thought that was an odd Kickstarter upgrade. Like, who cares? So, for the most part, though, I enjoy Canopy. I said some negative things about it, but it's a lot of fun, back and forth, 2-player game. I'd give it a 7. I'm saying the rating because I don't want people to think I did not like it. It's fun, and my wife enjoyed it a lot too. So, Canopy, and it's gorgeous, gorgeous game.
Okay. Next for me is called Kingdom Hearts Perilous Pursuit. I guess this has the Disney in front of it, so it's Disney's Kingdom Hearts Perilous Pursuit. This is a cooperative dice rolling game from the Op, who is a sponsor of this very program. This was not a review copy. I actually got this from the prize table at the Dice Tower Retreat. In Kingdom Hearts Perilous Pursuit, it's based on the Kingdom Hearts video game series, which I played. I think it's like 20 years old, at least the original game I played on the PlayStation 2. Kingdom Hearts is a combination of Final Fantasy-style role-playing and the Disney universe. And in the original, at least, Sora and his friends go through various worlds like the Lion King world and the Aladdin's Genie, Agrabah, and all these different Disney universes interacting with Disney characters and sort of questing their way through these adventures. So in the board game, you are presented with 6 worlds. And there's an assortment of difficulties of those worlds. There's, I think, 1 easy, 2 medium, and 3 difficult worlds. And those worlds have art from the video games. I think they're just screenshots. And a track that represent the Heartless, which are the bad guys in this video game series. And if you get the track of Heartless to the end, where the world is saved, hooray, you've saved that world and you move on to the next world. If it gets to the other end of the track, however, you've lost the world, and you have to draw a new one, you can only do that once and still survive the game. If you lose a second world, the game is over. You can also get knocked out of the game if any one of your characters runs out of hit points. Your characters have 10 hit points at the beginning of the game, and if they come to 0, you're done. You succeed by beating all 6 of the worlds. Each of your characters, you've got Sora and Riku and Kairi from the original games, as well as Goofy and Donald Duck. And they all have different strengths in addition to their 10 hit points. Donald, for example, is better at collecting items. Donald is good at healing people. Goofy, I think, is good at collecting items. And the others are good at attack or defense or whatever. The mechanism of the game is that you have these 6 dice. They all have 5 different symbols on them. The blue dice, you have 5 of those. They have a wild on them. And there's 1 black die. It has a nasty symbol, a heartless symbol on it. You don't like that heartless symbol. And you do the Yahtzee thing, the same mechanism. You roll all 6 dice. You choose which ones to keep. You roll again. You roll again. And then you take actions with those dice. If you roll the heartless symbol, though, that particular roll is forfeit. It counts against you as one of your 3 rolls, but you don't get to keep any of those dice. You have to re-roll them all. So hopefully you don't roll that too often, and you end up with a bunch of symbols. Your character board has sections of different actions. There's an attack section, there's a collect items action, there's a defense where you can put shield tokens on your board, there's a special action for your particular character. All of them have on the left side a ready section, which is some sort of cluster of these symbols. So, like, Sora has just a single symbol that he needs to ready his attack action, but he might need 4 or 5 symbols to ready his special action. You can spend that number of symbols to put a little token on that side of your sheet. Now that action is ready. You can't still do that yet, it's just ready. Then you have 1 more symbol to set that action, which is another token that you can put on your board. Once an action's been ready and set, anyone, you or any of your teammates, can place a symbol, a die symbol, on that space to take that action. So the game is all about charging up your abilities and your actions so that you can more efficiently use each other's abilities and defeat the Heartless. After you've taken all of your actions, then the bad guys roll. Each world has a certain number of dice it's going to roll. It's going to cause nasty effects to happen. More heartless damage to you. Just stuff. Bad. You don't like it. And this continues. If you get through a world, you move on to the next one, you get some sort of bonus, but it can sort of knock you back a little bit in your ready and set actions. So you can't just charge up everything and then plow through stuff. You still lose some of your progress that you went through. Item cards can help you get symbols and prevent the bad guys from rolling, that sort of thing. I like the way that you charge up. The decision of, do I use an action that I know I can do easily with a single symbol, or do I charge up my board so that others can use my stuff? Do I hope to roll enough of a particular symbol so that I can get my special ability to trigger, because those are really useful? Do I defend my teammates because they have a defense die available and I can go give them a die and help them get through a difficult section if they're running low on HP. There are cool decisions in here. My only reservation is that the game can get a little too easy. Once, experienced players, once they have figured out the general gist of how this all works, can raise up your characters, and with enough item cards and sharing and technique and strategy, even though the dice can certainly swing against you, I think you do get to a point where it's not too difficult to plow through. If you spend the time charging up your characters in those early worlds. Still, I think it's a great family weight cooperative game. For experienced gamers, if you're playing with just adults, I think this probably is too simple, a little too flat, a little too samey at some point. You disagree? Okay.
Well, first of all, I'm amazed that you spent almost twice as long explaining this game as the space game, when a space game is like 5 times more complicated.
It's entirely possible. I had to make sure I got Donald's ability correct. He's a mage. Anyway, I liked it. I just think it can get a little too easy in those later rounds if you've done your homework and charged up well enough.
Yeah, I like it. We played it wrong the first time we played. Apparently you can't use like your special ability unless everyone else's. You can't let someone else use your special ability unless theirs is also charged up.
Really?
Yeah, it really makes it difficult.
Oh, that's interesting.
We played it wrong in a live play, and the op did not correct us. So we're saying that the way we played it, we're pretty happy.
Yeah. I want to go look through that rule book.
Yeah, Chris noticed it.
Huh.
I was like, oh, that makes things much trickier.
It does, because some of those special powers are pretty strong, and if one person can charge up theirs, then yeah.
Yes, that's what I thought too.
Hey, Future Eric here. This has been bothering me, and I've been trying to find what Chris and Tom were talking about here. I have not been able to find confirmation of this rule error that they're talking about. I believe you can charge up your special ability, and that's fine. Everybody else can use it. Is somebody, if you find this, let me know. But I've looked on Board Game Geek, where I did find out that there was a previous Fantastic Beasts implementation of this system, which is interesting, and that it was also related to Rollers Deluxe, which I mentioned. But anyway, I've not been able to find this particular rules error that past Eric and Tom are talking about. So your mileage may vary here. I think we played it right. Anyway, back to them.
I don't know that charge / then activate, that doesn't feel intuitive.
No, it took a little while to figure it out. It's actually a very similar mechanism to Rollers Deluxe, which is a gambling game that I've had in my collection for a while. That you have to get a triple or a quad of something and then an extra symbol, and then you can do cool things. It's that same thing, except it's in a cooperative game here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I do like the game. I'm just going to play it incorrectly.
Sure. That was Kingdom Hearts Perilous Pursuit.
All right, let's talk about a game called Ark Nova. Have you heard of this one, Eric?
I have not, no.
All right, well, Ark Nova, you will hear about this because, well, I'll mention that there at the end. This is from a first-time designer. It is being published in America by Capstone Games, and it is about running a modern zoo. So Ark Nova, and you also supporting conservation projects. And this is important because in this game, you have 2 tracks. One is appeal and one is conservation. And they run counterclockwise to each other around the board. And when they cross each other, the game ends. And whoever crosses the most is the winner. So that's similar. You might have seen that in a game called Rajas of the Ganges.
Okay.
It uses a river mechanism. You have 5 action cards, which are animal, build, sponsors, and 2 other cards. Doesn't matter. You have these 5 action cards underneath your board in slots 1 through 5. You pick an action card, you use that action card, and the number it's under is basically how strong that action card is. So let's say, for example, you use build. It lets you build a building in your zoo, and you can build a building up to the size of the number it's under. So if it's under size 5, I can build a 5 size building. If it's under size 2, I can build a 1 or a 2 size building. So you do that, and then you take that card and move it to slot 1 and move everything else up. And so you're going to be continuing doing this. You are building different buildings in your zoo. You are playing sponsor cards from your hand, different sponsors. They give you special abilities. You are putting animals in your zoo. This game comes with a giant deck of cards. I don't remember how much, 255 cards. And every single card is different. There's no duplicate cards.
Okay.
And conservation projects. So like you can put an animal in your zoo. You can later on release that animal from your zoo. That when you release the animal from your zoo, you'll lose the appeal that animal adds, but you'll get more conservation points. So like in my first game of this I played, I spent a long time trying to get this giant panda. I was like, I'm going to get this panda in the zoo. He was in my zoo for like one turn. I was like, everyone come to my zoo. Watch me release the panda. Look at me. I love planet Earth.
Invite everyone to the farewell party to the panda.
So you're also sponsoring, doing association. You're partnering with zoos around the world, adding universities. So there's a lot going on in this game, and it all centers around that river of cards, which I mentioned, but it also centers around this 255 card deck. Every animal in it is different, and the animals have different requirements. So it's going to be very similar to people who've played Terraforming Mars. When you play an animal, you have to pay a certain amount of money for it. The animal requires a certain size pen. The animals might have some prerequisites that they have, and then animals will give you special abilities that you can play. And all this comes together. There's very little in this game that feels unique and new to this game, and yet it is amazing.
Okay.
I give this game a 10 out of 10.
Wow.
I love this game. I cannot emphasize, this game is so fun. It is all I want to play right now. Or I've taught it like the last 4 game nights. I've taught it every time to people. There's a negative, I think. It seems like it goes to 4 players, but 4 players I think might be too long. It's really good with 2 and 3.
Okay.
And it's a pretty involved game. There's a lot going on in it, but man, there's just so much. And like when you put buildings in your zoo, you'll cover up spaces that give you bonuses. And when you move on different tracks, there are bonuses. Remember that card river I told you there's those 5 cards?
Yeah.
You can, at certain points, you get to upgrade one of those. You turn one of those cards over and it's better than it was before. But oh my word, which of the cards do you turn over? They're all really useful. You can build newer kinds of buildings, like an aviary and a reptile house, if you flip over your build card. But if you flip over the animal card, you can build more animals. And some animals can only be built if you have the level 2 side up. And you can't do everything in this game. You won't even see the whole deck. In a 3-player game, I've never seen more than half the deck gone through. And so you're deciding on your turn, do you want to draw cards, build in your zoo? And oh my word, it's so good. If you like Terraforming Mars, throw it away.
But I just got my big box.
You know what? I'm not kidding. Between Terraforming Mars and Terraforming Mars Ares project, which gave me a very similar feel to Terraforming Mars, and between Ark Nova, I don't know that I'm going to play Terraforming Mars again. This game gives the exact same feeling as Terraforming Mars, at least with the collecting animal cards. It gives that whole big thing. This moving the 5 cards underneath the board is such a great mechanism. Turns are fast. I'm involved in this game from beginning to end. You have the satisfaction of building a zoo. There's even, one of the things I like the game does is there's some cards, monkeys and reptiles have some take that.
Of course they do.
Sure, right? Like you might play a constrictor and you play like some negative tokens on your opponent. There's 2 things. First of all, it's very mild take that. It's annoying at best, right? It's not game breaking.
Okay.
But secondly, if you don't like it, you don't play with it. All the take that cards have a little blue line on the bottom that gives you an alternative thing you can do if everyone agrees at the beginning.
Oh.
So that's a nice thing, right?
Huh.
But I'll tell you this. Every group I played it with so far has said, we'll try the take that. And every group has said, yeah, we'll keep it because it wasn't that big of a deal.
Okay.
It adds a tiny bit of interaction without really being a pain in the neck. So, oh man, I could just rave about this game for a long time, and I will likely continue to do so.
Okay.
I just keep thinking about it. It's so much fun. I mean, I will admit the theme of building a zoo is very attractive to me, but also there's just these combos that you do. I partnered with a zoo in Africa, which let me flip over my card. And my reputation in my zoo, there's a track for that, and move it up, and that gives me a token that lets me make this card better. Oh, so many good things in this game. Such a fantastic game, and I'm telling you, I am not alone in thinking this. I will place my reputation that within a year, this will be in the top 100 at BGG.
Okay.
This will be considered widely one of the best games of the year. I'm telling you that now. Everyone I've seen play it has loved it.
All right. Who's the publisher again?
Capstone.
Capstone for Ark Nova. So they're going to be at PAX.
This might be there as a demo, Eric. I think they sold out at Essen. And maybe it's there. And if it is, but I know that they're pre-ordering it now to deliver it in February.
Okay. All right. Cool.
So that's Ark Nova.
Well, if you thought that collection of games was a little random, you'll be happy to know that Geoff is on the case.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's time for Game Tech with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
I am endlessly fascinated by how people are impacted by randomness and how that can change game designs. Last Epoch is a video game that is very similar to Diablo. You run around, beat up endless waves of monsters, and get loot. Then you can use runes to craft improvements to your weapons and other pieces of equipment. Now recently, the Last Epoch developers announced that they were changing the crafting system because of the way players were reacting to the randomness. In the original system, whenever you improved an item, it would show you the chance of success and the chance of failure. For example, you might have a 93% chance of succeeding. If the upgrade failed, there were different bad things that could happen. Most likely the equipment would lose some stats, or it might lose a bunch of stats, or it might even be completely destroyed. Regardless of what bad thing happened, once you failed a crafting check, the equipment could never be crafted again. So what was wrong with this system? Well, nothing was wrong with it per se, but it felt unfair to the players. The probability of a successive crafting attempt was typically over 90%. So when it failed, particularly when it was a catastrophic failure, it just felt like a bolt from the blue. Given a 95% chance of success, you're almost certainly going to try to upgrade your weapon. You need to as the game gets harder, so that unexpected 5% chance of failure was just a feel-bad moment. The root of the problem is that we, as humans, are very bad at dealing with probability. Our brains will typically assume that anything above 90% or even 80% is basically a given and it's going to happen. We count on it for planning and go from there. Similarly, we tend to discount very low probabilities. If I tell you that option A has a 1% chance of happening and option B has a 2% chance, you're basically going to lump those together in your brain and assume they'll happen at about the same frequency, even though B is twice as likely. Because of this tendency for us to overestimate our chances at high probabilities, for us to think that 90% is basically 100%, video game designers often fudge numbers behind the scenes. Famously, the game XCOM 2 did this. In XCOM 2, where you battle aliens, anytime you can take a shot, the game shows you the probability of a hit, 85% for example. However, during testing, it came out that people expected to make an 85% shot more than 85% of the time. So at normal difficulty levels, and even at veteran difficulty, they boosted the internal chance to hit so it was above what was listed, what was shown to the players, which made it feel more right to them. In addition, they added a catch-up mechanism of sorts that added to your behind-the-scenes die roll each time you missed. So the more you missed, the more likely it became that the next shot would hit. Now, none of this was visible to the players. In fact, if they had shown the players the actual hit chance, it would have erased the magic. The key was, even though the game told the players there was an 85% chance to hit, it was actually more like 95%. Now, rather than fudge the numbers behind the scenes, the designers of Last Epoch chose a different fix for their crafting system. They ended up making crafting much more predictable. Equipment now has a number of forging points. When you craft an upgrade, you use up a random number of points from 1 to 15. And when you run out of forging points on a particular upgrade, you now still get the upgrade, but you just can't upgrade anymore. So now there's a limit to upgrading, but the risk is gone. And you can see when you're getting close to running out of forging points. My son, who is a big Lost Epoch player and brought this change to my attention, is a big fan of the new crafting system. Now, the fudging of random numbers like XCOM did is tough to do in a board game. The procedural nature makes it hard to hide modifiers like this. However, I do have one idea of how you could do this. I've seen systems that have complex dice systems or have you draw cards and look for symbols or combinations of symbols. As it can be tough for players to see what the chance of success is in that system given the complexity, often in the rules there's a chart that says what the probability is given certain situations. For example, it might say that drawing 4 cards and looking for a clover symbol has a 50% chance of success. Now, what a clever designer could do is basically lie on that table. If the chance of success was actually 90% in the deck, you could put in the rules and tell players that it's 80%. Now, eventually someone may do the math, I guess, and see that it isn't actually 80%, but it's really 90%. But in the meantime, the players would be successful more times in line with what they psychologically feel is correct. And oftentimes in design, psychology trumps math. This is Geoff Engelstein with Game Tech.
Real quick, before we go any farther, I want to say thanks to Geoff for everything he does, but also Geoff is going to be joining us as co-host in 2 episodes. So,
Ooh.
Yay! He will school us all in his wisdom.
I'm looking forward to that.
All right, folks, I promised you the scariest tale of horror that I've heard in a long time. Brace yourselves, here it comes.
And now, another tale of board gaming horror.
Oh my, that's horrific.
Gather round, children. It was the Christmas season of a year when the word pandemic would immediately have us think of the Z-Man board game as a piece of fiction, the golden age of 2018. I was asked by my church with organizing, rehearsing, and performing our congregation's annual Christmas concert, and for the past 3 months, my life had been revolving around this event. I am an orchestra conductor, so naturally I focused all my energy on the musical side of the event. We had a choir, soloists, pianos, a string orchestra, you name it. However, I woke up the week of the concert realizing that I had completely neglected the visual side of the event. I started to panic because I had no concept, no decorations, nothing. My wife came to the rescue and told me she would handle everything. I felt relieved and focused my attention back on the music. I was barely at home during those days and nights. Finally, the day of the performance arrived. I walked up to the stage only to find the most amazing scenery for a Christmas concert. Huge trees decorated with ornaments and lights, and the whole front part of the stage was covered in beautifully wrapped gift boxes. It was not a big stage by any means, but it was magical. The concert was a tremendous success. After the performance, I was still on the stage, greeting and thanking people for their help. Suddenly, an old lady walked up to me. She said that those gift boxes were beautiful and asked if, by any chance, she would be able to take one home to decorate her place. Filled with the spirit of giving, I told her that she could take as many boxes as she wanted because we didn't need them anymore. She smiled and grabbed a shiny golden box. Then she waved at another lady who then came and took a box herself. A few seconds later, there were dozens of old ladies grabbing boxes and walking away with them. I had never seen such a thing. The whole scene made me chuckle, and I thought it was neat that these ladies were walking away with a little souvenir of the concert. An hour later, the nightmare began. I heard my wife yelling, "Where are the boxes that I brought?" The tone of horror in her voice made me connect the dots immediately. I knew I had seen those boxes before. I turned to look at her with my stomach down to my feet. She couldn't even speak. After revealing that I had given them all away, she fearfully replied, "I didn't have time to get empty boxes, so I wrapped your board game collection." It was too late. I went out of the building, only to find that the ladies were gone. and with them, 44 games. I spent the rest of the month trying to locate the old ladies. They were not even a part of our congregation. I researched for groups of elderly people, but nobody had any recollection of attending a concert and taking wrapped gifts. I finally gave up, and I started to wonder how would these ladies react when they finally unwrapped those boxes and found my fully painted copy of Imperial Assault, my copies of Azul, Netrunner, Near and Far, even some old out-of-prints. Would they give the games to a child who wouldn't know what to do with them? Would a lucky fellow gamer witness a Christmas miracle? Would they unwrap the boxes at all, or would they end up in the trash? All I knew was that the answer to my questions would never come. Still, to this day, when I hear Christmas music, I am reminded of that time when I had to build a board game collection from the ground, all over again. Ho, ho, ho!
That's like terrible.
It's like the opposite of a feel-good Christmas story.
Because here's the thing. Everyone involved was being nice.
Yes. He's like, sure, absolutely.
His wife was nice. She wrapped him. Oh, who cares? I would have said yes. He nicely gave him away. The people were just being nice. Now, the only thing that wasn't nice was like, why didn't they bring them back? But you know what? I bet they opened them, saw they were board games, and were like, meh, old board games.
Yeah, or didn't unwrap them. If they just...
That's the worst,
it was just a decoration. This goes in the attic when they're done with it. Or now here's the twist. What if this was a team of thieves? He never did find out.
They weren't old ladies. They were young board gamers dressed up
and they knew
old
all
ladies.
along what was in those boxes. They were watching the concert and they said, that is a Ticket to Ride size box. I know what's going on here. Quick, put on the makeup.
I'm telling you, I can hear the argument later where both people are frustrated, blaming each other, but not really. Like, why did you wrap my gifts? Why did you give them away?
Right.
I wouldn't have given them away if you hadn't wrapped them. Why I wouldn't have wrapped them if I'd known you were giving them away? And round and round and round.
And if he had just picked it up, like if he just pointed at the box and said, sure, take it. If he had picked it up and handed it to the lady.
You know from experience that when you are in the afterglow of a program.
Sure.
You don't care about anything like that.
No.
They could be like, can I have a brick? And you'd be like, yeah, I don't care.
Sure, I don't need that brick. The show is over.
Right. When the show's over, if you've never been in a show, folks, it's hard to explain. You just don't care.
You're helping me clean up. I was going to have to stick around for an extra hour to clean this up. You are helping me. Please take those boxes away.
All right, folks, you're going to have to work hard to top that one. I was very impressed with it. And saddened.
And saddened. Yes, impressed and sad. He did. This is from a gentleman named David. He did say he's replaced most of what he lost those few years ago, but still sad. Support for the Dice Tower comes from the Op, bringing you Cuphead, the fast-rolling dice game. From the popular side-scrolling run-and-gun video game, Cuphead, comes an all-new fast-action original cooperative dice game from the Op. In Cuphead, the fast-rolling dice game, you work together to be quick and nimble to avoid the attacks and defeat the bosses to win. Roll to fill your move meter with jump, parry, and attack moves as you battle against familiar bosses, but hurry before the timer runs out. It includes 8 fan-favorite boss decks, custom dice, custom art, and more. Replay over and over again to try and beat your high score. It's a must-have for any Cuphead fan. Cuphead, the fast-rolling dice game, is available now at theop.games or your friendly local game store. And don't forget the promo code for Dice Tower listeners. You can get 10% off your entire purchase at theop.games. It's available for all games, puzzles, and accessories. Also, free shipping is available on purchases of $49 or more. Offer available for U.S. residents only. Enter the code DICETOWER at theop.games.
Questions.
Wojtek says, Hi, Tom and Eric. You have recently made a top 10 party games list, which was very helpful. And to my delight, you have excluded social deduction games from that list. I appreciate that, as I agree that's a different type of beast. This distinction, however, got me wondering. I believe the same goes for logical deduction games. I'm looking for titles without the trader mechanic. Board Game Geek doesn't help here much, as there is no dedicated category for social deduction nor logical deduction. They all sit together in the database. To be honest, I would even further divide the category to logical deduction, social deduction, and escape room style games, which can often flood deduction category game lists. What's your view on this? Do you agree that games like Cryptid, Search for Planet X, Alchemists, or Awkward Guests have very little in common with things like The Resistance, Good Cop, Bad Cop, Werewolf, and Secret Hitler? If so, would it be possible, please, to hear your top 10 logical deduction games list in the near future? These are all excellent points, Wojtek, and I believe we made them when we did our top 10 logical deduction games list. I swear that we had this discussion, Tom, when we did a deduction games list, and we tried to at least separate social deduction from logical deduction.
They are different. Social deduction, you are trying to pick up on verbal or nonverbal hints and clues.
Right.
A logical deduction, you are picking up on information. It's factual based.
Yes.
I don't even consider I wouldn't consider the Venn diagram. I mean, I like both. Although I much rather play a logical deduction game than a social deduction game.
I prefer the logical over the social on this one, yes. And I agree that the escape room puzzle style games should also be a separate thing. They're not really the same.
All right, let's jump to a really short tale of horror here. Anthony says, I was invited to a Halloween game night over Facebook. The description said costumes are encouraged. My wife and I dressed up, but we're the only ones that dressed up. The host invited everyone else by personal text and didn't mention the costumes. We have gamed with them almost exclusively in large group invitations like this one, so we feel like we're outsiders. Am I wrong to be irritated? This sounds like 4 or 5 different commercials I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, I would be somewhat annoyed that that almost sounds like they were set up.
Maybe, but I think the Hanlon's razor always applies in this circumstance, I think. Where it says, don't ever apply, how does it say here? Don't attribute to malice what can be more easily attributed to stupidity.
Sure. It was more an oversight than it was them being mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in that case, don't be irritated. Maybe be slightly irritated, but hey, here's your chance to not be an outsider. I'm in the party. And I get it. It's embarrassing, but...
Right. But did they win the costume contest?
I don't know. Here, I would actually even maybe just have a straight talk with the person saying, well, really, this wasn't cool. You know, we thought we were supposed to wear. I mean, you kind of got to go into it with that kind of attitude. And you know what? Maybe they'll go out of their way to make sure they remind you next time. You know, when something is different and all. So, yeah. I would be irritated too, for sure. I've been in situations. I mean, I've never been in something that one, but I do remember going to a group one time when I was in Korea. There was a group of preachers getting together, and I was like, it's Tuesday. And I looked on the invitation, and I was like, I don't see anything that says it's dress up. Now, if you guys see my videos, you know I like to dress up.
Yep.
But I was like, you know what? I'll dress down for this. Probably not a big deal. It was a big deal. Only person dressed down was Tom Vassell. Would have been useful information to have known.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes it's one of those things that, it's an institutional knowledge. Well, we've always done it this way. It's always been a formal dining event, and we just didn't think we needed to mention it this time.
Sure.
Yeah. Again, oversight, but it's something that, if you're a host, it's something that you need to be aware of. That you need to make sure everyone has the same information for the event that you are throwing. Raphael tells a story of going to Essen this year, and due to work commitments, he didn't have a lot of time to check out any games in advance. And so his wife looked at the games. And during the event, he says, we saw a game that sounded interesting, a Euro game called Lost Ruins of Arnak. I asked her about it, and she said, nah, it's a family game, according to Board Game Geek. She is, and this is Raphael's words, a bit of a game snob and tends to ignore games that are not heavy enough or we have a similar game. But the game got my attention. My friends and I started looking a bit closer at them, and it did not sound like a light game at all. A light theme at best, but the mechanisms were quite complex. She then reevaluated the game and ended up buying it. We even played back in the hotel, and the game was full of strategic decisions, not super innovative or anything, but a really good, solid game nonetheless. So, my questions are, A, what makes a game family game for you? My wife and I like heavy games, therefore are all our games family games? And B, what makes a game a family game for Board Game Geek? Any idea how this criteria is chosen? Is it as broken as the complexity ratio you always love to hate? And C, any idea on how to deal with snob players that do not want to play light games? I like heavy games sometimes, but I also like to play games to relax. And as you can see, my wife simply ignores these games. As last time, I need your advice to save my marriage, so I'm counting on you. That escalated quickly.
Yeah, okay, no. Honestly, I don't know why you want to make someone play games that person doesn't like. It doesn't almost ever work.
That's true. If they're going to be grumpy the whole time, it's not worth doing.
So if you want to play a light game, instead of changing the game, change the opponent. Now, I am not advocating hunting down a spouse who likes a different style of game. What I mean is finding somebody else on Earth who likes playing those type of games and playing them with them.
True.
This is hilarious because this question is almost always asked from the other aspect of like, all anyone ever wants to do is play light games.
Right.
And here they want to play heavy, right? You know there's at least 10 people listening to this right now who are like, are you kidding me?
I would love it if we only played heavy games.
Yeah. All right, so jumping into the middle here, what makes a game family? That term's thrown around. I've actually started using the moniker welcoming games.
Yeah.
And I got that from Z. Z came up with that moniker, and I like it. Because not every game's a family, and you could say, well, my family plays Kalis. Yes. But everyone knows what we mean by that, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me jumping about the complexity scale. I just had a big argument with someone yesterday about that game's a lightweight game. And I was like, it's not lightweight.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what gives a game family as far as a designation. I think it's a crowdsourced sort of thing. If enough users tag it with family game, then it becomes a game that has family game as one of its criteria and listing points. It could be that the publisher, when they put the listing up, puts in family game because they think it will be, will have a wider appeal, that sort of thing. As far as what I would consider a family game, I think it's that stereotypical parents and kids setup where you have a wide range of ages of players and therefore rule sets that are easier to understand for those wide ranges. Thinking of like a 7 or 8-year-old playing with parents or grandparents and having a game that can accommodate that wider range of abilities, that to me says family game. Once your kids are all teenagers and above, then that designation is less useful because you're going to be looking at those heavier games or be able to handle more complex games and still be playing with your family.
I also would say I'm very hesitant to call, unless it's completely as a joke, and even then I would be careful not to call someone who doesn't want to play light games a snob any more than I would want to be called a snob because I don't want to play a war game, a heavy war game.
That's true, which is why Raphael is the one saying it and not us.
Sure, and I think a lot of this is tongue-in-cheek and stuff, but again, I think it's a humorous problem that he wants to play lighter games.
Yes.
It's so much easier to find people to play those, though. Like, I think you could just go out in the street and find some people to do that.
Just wear one of those sandwich boards that says, we'll play light games.
Go to a Christmas party with your relatives. That's what they want to play. You're in luck. They're everywhere. Alrighty, well, that's all the questions we got for today, folks. Send us some more questions. We'd love to answer them, but we want to jump to our top 10 list.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is brought to you by Game Nerds at GameNerdZ.com.
Okay, folks, so this list here is our top 10 surprises of 2021. So a couple caveats before we start. First of all, we're picking games that I played and were new to me in 2021 and I think came out in 2021, and we're just going to have a wide net there. No, there's just no way around it.
Sure.
It might have been a very small release. It might have been come out the last week of December 2020, or it might not be readily available till next year, early next year. These are all published games I played in 2021.
Sure.
Also, I deliberately didn't pick games that are in my top 10 list.
I didn't do that. I think you had a wider net than I did.
I have a very wide net in this. I have like 10 top 10 lists I've done.
Yeah.
So with that being said, so some of these are in your top 10. Well,
some of these are, yeah.
Interesting. Well, I know two of yours actually. But yeah, so some of them, well, either way, these were all surprises to me. These were all games I was not expecting to like as much as I did. So I'm very interested in this. I think we have no crossovers.
No crossover this time.
But I've played almost all Eric's. So
good.
I have lots to say.
Okay.
Number 10.
My number 10 surprise is that I've been playing Kingdom Hearts Perilous Pursuit incorrectly, as Tom just told me. And so I have to go look at the rulebook and figure out why. No, actually, the reason it's on the list, it was on the list before Tom told me that. Kingdom Hearts Perilous Pursuit, I did not think I was going to like as much as I did. Video game tie-ins often don't work all that well, and the fact that it sort of got those wheels turning and had a great time and that my kids liked it, yeah, that was a nice surprise for me. Number 10, Kingdom Hearts Perilous Pursuit.
My number 10 is Box 1. Did I talk about this one on the show?
You didn't talk about it on the show, but I watched your review and I talked about it on the show.
That's right. Okay, so I'm stealing Eric's here. I'm telling you, I would not have bought this had I not heard someone else talk about it. Because it looks like a cash grab from Neil Patrick Harris. It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, he seems like a nice chap, but I just have a very low assumption that a movie star or TV star in this case, or a Broadway star, or whatever, knows what they're doing with board games. But this is an escape room game that has a very strong storyline that works. So I was very impressed with this.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved it too. This actually came out in 2020. I got it for my son for Christmas that year, last year. So it is a blast. You can't say much about it because it is like the discovery is such a major part of this game, but it is a puzzle game for puzzle lovers. You will have a blast with Box 1.
2021.
Number 9.
My number 9 is a game in the Dixit universe, which I did not know existed, and that's part of the surprise. It's called Stella. This takes those familiar Dixit cards, and you could actually use Dixit cards in this game, and puts them in a grid and sort of does the guessing and the clue giving in sort of a different way. You're given a word this time, and you have to choose multiple cards from this grid that you think match that particular word, and you're hoping that other people are guessing the same things, and there's sort of a reveal round, and you earn points for doing so. The surprise is that there was more mileage in this Dixit concept, in this artwork style, in how all of these things work, after Dixit's been around for, 10, 15 years at this point? And to see something take it in a new direction was a pleasant surprise. Stella, Dixit Universe, is my number 9.
Yeah, this is a good one. It's a good one. My number 9 is Mindbug. This is a small little game from Richard Garfield and 3 other designers. It is like Magic the Gathering, the mini game. It's just a small deck of cards. You both use the same cards. You play some creatures. You attack your opponent. You got to hit them 3 times. and you win. But as you summon a creature, and all the creatures are free to summon, they're all different powers from 1 to 10 with all different special abilities. You each have 2 mind bugs, and twice per game when your opponent plays a card, you can say, no, that's actually my card, and I get to use it. Knowing when to play those is like this very complex rock, paper, scissors in your head type thing. It's pretty neat. I like it, so that's Mind Bug.
Number 8.
My next pleasant surprise is Let's Make a Bus Route, the dice game. This is the Sashi and Sashi dice version of the flip and write, rando writer, Let's Make a Bus Route. I did not know this was coming, and not only is it a surprise that this game exists, but also that they were re-releasing some other favorites and getting wider distribution for some of the Sashi and Sashi games that I've enjoyed over the years. The dice game specifically is a 2-player or 1-player solo game, and you're using dice to activate symbols and draw routes on the board. I didn't necessarily think that they needed a 2-player version, but I was pleasantly surprised in seeing how they make things a little tighter and deal with traffic in a slightly different way, and it's a pretty neat 2-player version. Let's Make a Bus Route, the dice game, my number 8 surprise.
My number 8 is Rift Force. I will give some credit back to Carlo Bordolini because he made the game Memoir, whatever that garbage name is.
Yeah.
Rift Force, though, is a 2-player kind of, you pick some guilds, you shuffle them together, and then you have, it's similar to Battle Line, except you actually attack your opponent. You're using different cards with special powers to try to control different regions. So there's a lot of similarities to, like I said, Battle Line, but I really like this. The combinations and everything are really fun. The artwork looks cool. There's an expansion coming out for it. I'm really excited about that. Normally I'm not, but it adds more factions. It's really quick and fun. This is a neat game. So Rift Force, highly recommended.
Number 7.
My number 7 is a game from Restoration Games that is actually an announcement of a future game. Come around Gen Con was the period that this happened. Omega Virus Prologue is a small little single deck game. It's a speed game, tile laying sort of thing. You're trying to match symbols together and create patterns. It's a fun little game. But because it's Omega Virus Prologue, it is the announcement that they are going to release a full-fledged Omega Virus reprint in the near future. And they could have just announced this, but instead they announced it with this mini card game. And that's actually pretty fun. And that was my surprise. Omega Virus Prologue, number 7.
My number 7 is Mining Colony. This is from Steve Finn, Dr. Finn's Games. He has a lot of hits and misses, really all over the place. Best known for Biblios. This one's really cool. It has a bidding mechanism of sort, where you have these cards that you're bidding for, and you get like a group of items. You then place these items on your board, and the way you place them will cause you to score points. That's the whole thing, but it's this little Mars theme, but it's really crunchy. It has a feeling of a bigger, more complex game that takes place very quickly in 40 minutes. I really like this one. So with the lackluster name Mining Colony, still fun.
Number 6.
Number 6 is the cooperative game from Pandasaurus called The Loop. You are traveling through time and trying to defeat the evil Dr. Foe. Mechanically, I really enjoy the game. It's got a cool cube tower that's neat. Why it was a surprise for me is how well they integrated the theme and the style into the presentation of this, in the rule book and the different items you can get. I'm still I love the skateboard or the hoverboard with wheels, which is just a skateboard. It's just a blast to discover these different items in the different time frames, and the tongue-in-cheek just flavor of the whole thing works so well. And that was my surprise for The Loop. Also a great game mechanically. My number 6.
I'm less excited about it, but I get it. I'm in the minority on this one. My next surprise is Shamans. Now, Shamans has kind of I don't know, I'm just not really sold on the box cover here. This is from Studio H, who is surprising me, I guess, as an entirety of some of the games that they've done in the past. Their big game this year is Ultree. But Shamans is a trick taking social deduction game that shouldn't work. But it really does. It comes together in a really interesting combination of knowing and sometimes switching sides back and forth. It's between light and darkness, and pick one of the sides to be on, moving a token. It's really tight and tense, very abstractish, dreamy worlds and all. I don't know what the theme is. Who cares? But I like it a lot. Shamans.
Cool.
Number 5.
My number 5 is Cascadia, a game I knew nothing about until I got to sit down in front of it. A lovely nature-themed game with a cool tile. It's tile laying and tile drafting, animal drafting. But the decision space is the surprise for me here, and how you always have 3 options for placement every time you play, and you're always going to draft one animal and one tile and put them down, and so you always have 3 more open on your board, and having that, it seems like a nice sweet spot of what your options are on each turn. You're not overwhelmed by your possibilities, but you have just enough that you can sort of keep your options open, and I like the way that flows so well in Cascadia. My number 5 surprise.
My number 5, and Cascadia is good. I just wasn't surprised by it. I expected it to be good.
There you go.
My number 5 is Overboss, a boss monster adventure. I wasn't expecting this to be that great because I didn't really like Boss Monster. I should have looked at the designers of this game because one of the designers, Kevin Russ, was one of the designers of Calico, Tumbletown, and Verdant. And the other one also designed Verdant. But this is a tile-laying game where you're making your dungeon, but you draft a tile and a monster. You're building your own dungeon, and then you're putting them in your dungeon, and each tile scores slightly differently, and the monsters score slightly differently, and so you got to figure out where to put them to score best. Very simple, fast game, but I enjoy it. You can use different groups of monsters and terrains each game. So that's Overboss, a boss monster adventure.
Number 4.
My number 4 is The Initiative, a game that has surprises built into it. I knew I was going to enjoy this game based on Tom's description of it, but I didn't know how much I was going to like this, and there's lots of stuff to explore in here, stuff written in the margins. Stuff in the comic books. There's story to explore. All these different missions that become increasingly more complex as you discover more of the story. Again, that's about as far as I can go because there's surprises in the box in The Initiative. My number 4.
There is, but one of the biggest surprises seems really obvious. My kids were like, "This is this, right?" And I was like, "Probably." Think of it as the equivalent of 3 kids showing up in a giant coat, pretending to be an adult. It's the same thing. We're like, okay, you're an adult. I'll pretend and I don't see the 3 kids.
Sure.
But that being said, I get it. I think my initial take on this was positive, and there's some of it I was not as big of a fan of. I don't like the game as much as I like the puzzle solving.
Sure.
But coming around on it, I'm wondering if I just was coming at it from an angle that this may just be a lighter family game.
Yeah.
And in that case, it works better.
Yeah. Also, the fact that it's the debut of this new board game publisher that sort of jumped onto the scene with this game, that was a bit of a surprise as well.
All right, my next one's Rule the Realm, which BGG says is 2019, but I didn't see it in America until this year, so I'm calling it. Rule the Realm is an area control game that uses rubber bands or hair ties. Well, I mean, they're rubber bands, but they feel like hair ties. And you are stretching them out on one of, I think, 8 different boards, trying to collect coins and move your little meeples around. And each game has very different rules on how you stretch them out and control things. It sounds ridiculous. It looks like it's mass market. And it's pretty fun. I was very impressed with this game. A lot of fun. It feels unique and interesting. You stretch these rubber bands out. You see yourself moving across the board, trying to wrap these rubber bands around coins and other things. I like it a lot. You collect cards, then you spend these cards to stretch these rubber bands out. So that's Rule the Realm.
Number 3.
I was certainly not expecting to ride spectral rails and try and help ghosts remember their humanity, but that's what happened when I walked up to see Tom playing this game, Vagrant Song, and immediately wanted to give it a try myself. You are a vagrant, a hobo-style character. I played the banjo. There's one with a dog, adorable characters who are riding this ghost train and encountering various ghosts and odd happenings. But the style was the real surprise for me. It looked mechanically pretty cool. The art style was neat, but the way that the missions are presented, the writing of the whole thing really brings you into this flavor of riding the rails in Vagrant Song. My surprise, number 3.
Yeah, such a great game. Such a great game. And yeah, I didn't know what to expect, and it's fantastic. My number, what do we got? 3 is Night of the Ninja. Now, when Justin Gary told me he had designed a social deduction game, in my head I was like, sure. We've seen 200 trillion social deduction games. I'm not even come close to exaggerating. Okay, maybe a little. This one is fast. It's 15 to 30 minutes, and it's quick. It's interesting. It's one person wins this game, but you play multiple rounds, and you want your team to win so that you get points, and when your team wins, you get points. And you have these 2 teams with a possible rogue in there, but it's through card play, quick, assassinating each other back and forth. Very fun, neat components, very impressive. I went into this fully expecting to be underwhelmed, and I was not. That's Night of the Ninja.
Number 2.
My number 2 I thought I was going to enjoy. That is AEG's Cubitos, the dice pool building game, the race game. I thought I was going to like it. It looked like one that was going to click for me, but I did not know how hard I was going to fall for this. I immediately had to play it with my family. I had to play it multiple times when I was hanging out at the Dice Tower headquarters. It was amazing, and had to immediately show it to everyone I knew. I just didn't think it was going to hit that hard for me, but definitely did, which is why Cubitos was a surprise. Number 2.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to see that on your list. Mind Management. Now, when I saw the art for this game, I got to say, I like the game, but it's based on a comic book, so... I think the full name is Mind Management, the Psychic Espionage Game. And game is in quotation marks. So it's based on Mind Management, this graphic novels. And this art, who's done by Matt Kint, which is growing on me slightly here. But the designers are Jay Cormier and Sen-Fung Lim. And they've done a lot of good games.
Yeah.
And this game, I played it, and it's like a Scotland Yard style. One person is moving around trying to recruit agents. The other players are trying to stop them. And it also evolves and changes over the course of several games. So if the mind management player wins, then the players trying to capture him open up a packet and they get some extra abilities to stop them next time. If the other thing happens, then the mind management player opens up a packet, etc. And it's a very involved, interesting game. I was very impressed with it. So that's Mind Management, and it's spelled Mind MGMT.
And finally, number 1.
My number 1 was a total surprise until Tom slapped it down in front of me and said, "This is new, let's play this." And that's Meadow, which is a lovely, mechanically, a cool game where you're drafting cards from a grid and trying to put them into your tableau, but it's the way those cards interact. As you need proper terrain to build small animals on or plants on. And then you need some of those small animals to build larger animals on. And then you need some of those larger animals to be food for predator animals that can come in. Or you need certain terrain to build a cabin in the woods. And the way that these cards overlap each other, and some of them remove icons from the card that they're replacing, and some keep those icons going, which actually is a very subtle ecosystem building. I was just fascinated by the whole system. How a mailbox will leave most of its terrain intact because it's just a mailbox, but a house will cover most of the things that it is being played on top of. It all works together to create this really cool ecosystem that you're building in these 8 columns that are in front of you. And I was fascinated by that and delighted by the surprise of Meadow, my number 1.
Yeah, great game, Meadow. My number 1 is a game that hasn't got that much buzz. It's Almadi, Almadi. This is from Funny Fox Publishers, and it doesn't look that interesting at all. It's a tile-laying game. You're drafting these tiles and placing them on your board, but the tiles have arrows on each side, and they have symbols on the sides. And when you make an arrow point to a symbol, then that action happens, which lets you move the tiles and gives you gems and lets you get victory points and goods. And it's such a neat game. I keep playing it going, this is really fun and interesting. I was really blown away because the theme of, what is the theme? Build the city of Almaty for the Sultan, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
You know, who cares? You're using oases and palaces and markets and caravans. Yay. But it's a solid, fun game. I was very much impressed with it. So my number 1 is Almaty. Now, here's the deal, Eric. I always forget. To me, a surprise is, surprise, happy birthday. And surprise, you lost your job I don't consider that a surprise. That's
okay.
It's a bad surprise. That's not what we meant. But I didn't make that clear. And I only say that because a few of the entries here. So
okay.
Let's see. Here we go. Number 20. For this is People's Choice. Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. I'm not sure who was surprised by that.
Well, I mean, maybe that it worked well as a card game and maybe worked, in some people's opinion, better than the Big Brother.
Fair enough. Clash of Cultures. I guess people were surprised that it was finally reprinted, well, a decade later.
Sure.
Hadrian's Wall. People were probably surprised that it was a roll and write game that complex. That was good.
Sure. It almost made my list.
Furnace. That was a surprise. I think that one came out of nowhere. That one maybe I could have put on my list but that one I guess I read the rules and I expected it to be good. 16 Tumbletown. That's a fun little game with some nice dice. 15 Merchant's Cove. There for me the surprise would be not as good as I had hoped. But I don't know what people thought on this one.
Okay.
I'll just listen what they put. 14 Dreadful Circus. I have not played that one. 13 is Overboss. Yes, crossover, Eric.
There you go.
Feel it. Number 12, Lawyer Up. This one was less a surprise for me because when I first heard about the theme of this, I was super excited. You know, to play prosecutor versus defense, very neat idea. 10, Marvel United.
We skipped 11.
Oh, 11 is Land versus Sea. Land versus Sea. Excellent game. That one surprised me too. I could have put that on my list.
Okay, yeah.
Marvel United. You were surprised by this if you don't know what Kickstarter is.
You were surprised at how many boxes there were.
Number 9, Unfathomable. Maybe you were surprised when halfway through the game you were like, wait a minute. This is Battlestar Galactica.
Surprise!
Number 8, Time of Legends Destinies. So that's a lot of people enjoying that one. I very much like this one, a scanning game. 7, Seven Wonders Architects. You know what? This one maybe should have made my list. I was really surprised by this because I was like, they're making Seven Wonders simpler? Okay. Yeah. And it was fantastic.
All right.
6, Imperium Classics. I guess people were surprised that the game could have that much depth for a deck builder. 5, Canvas. Have you played Canvas yet?
Haven't played Canvas, no.
Yeah, it's such a neat little game, but it's very, very light, but very good. Uh-oh, we now start crossing Eric. 4, Cascadia.
Yeah.
3, Meadow.
Uh-huh.
2, Red Rising. I'm going to go with the surprise here was it wasn't as good as people hoped. I think. Because maybe everyone was surprised that it came out of nowhere, and Jamie Stegmaier was like, we're making a game on Red Rising. And people were like, what? And then it was like, it's not really that good. Oh.
I haven't played it. I can't comment on that one.
And then number 1, So Clover.
Yeah, this made my top list of the year. I didn't think it was a surprise for me, because as soon as I heard about it, I said, yeah, that's going to be great. And so, yeah, that's not quite unexpected, I guess.
Well, there you go, folks. That's our top 10 surprises of 2021. Lots more going on from 2021, including, like we said, our top 10 games and more. And you can see and hear all that in the Dice Tower Winter Spectacular happening right now on our Dice Tower YouTube channel. Well, that's almost it for the episode. One last thing here.
One last thing.
Well, yeah. Okay, folks, I thought about writing this out like a paragraph. I just can't do that. You can ask Eric. My notes that I put in these things is never really overly detailed.
Bullet points is the most I can really hope for, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I bet Eric looks at a bullet point and goes, what does that even mean?
As long as you know.
I know, but then sometimes I miss things or I don't say it the way I want to say it. But anyway, so I just talked about the Dice Tower YouTube channel. Dice Tower YouTube channel has changed my life. I mean, board gaming itself changed my life. There's no question on that. Starting next year, the tagline Dice Tower is going to be 20 years of reviews. Because my first review was in 2002.
Wow.
So that's kind of exciting. The reviews were a big part. And then when the Dice Tower podcast started, it was like half Dice Tower podcast, half reviews. When the reviews moved to YouTube, it was still that way until about 7 years ago or so, when the YouTube channel just took off. And it became a major part of my life. I put a good chunk of time into the YouTube channel. But what I want to talk about now is we're announcing officially here, and this is an irrevocable thing. Well, I'm saying that now because I'm trying to avoid people trying to talk me out of it.
Okay.
And we're shutting down the Dice Tower podcast. So to that end, let me go through the how, the why, the what, and the thanks. All right. So let's talk about the how. This isn't the last one. We're going to end the podcast at episode 750. This is episode 740. Mm-hmm. You have 10 more episodes.
Indeed.
Way back in the day, one of the best board gaming podcasts, and I would still put it up as one of the best 5 board gaming podcasts ever, was Cody and John. What was that called? Game On.
Game On with Cody and John.
I like those guys. They did a great job. And you know what? They also stopped their podcast, and they counted down 5 episodes. Was it 5 they did?
I think they did a final 5, yeah.
That's right. And when I heard that, I thought, I really like that. They didn't fade out like many podcasts do. They didn't show up one day and say, we're done. They went out in style. I said, we could be twice as good as that. But not really. But I did want to give people some heads up here. So 10 episodes, we'll be doing a countdown. And that's actually one of the reasons you'll hear Geoff coming on with us next week. And maybe other guest hosts. In 2 weeks. So that's how it's going to be. We're going to count that down. And, well, that's the how. So more importantly, the whys. So I want to be clear that this is my call. Don't blame Eric or Mandy or Suzanne. This was my choice. And I've been wrestling with this for years, frankly. I've had discussions with Eric that kind of towed this line, I don't know, well before COVID started. Mm-hmm. And I felt like it was time for the show to end. I wanted to wait to episode 1000.
Yep.
But that's 5 more years. So I felt like my creative energy for this show is I really want to end on a high note without starting to reiterate. I mean, we do some of the same top 10s we used to do. We're doing some of the same stuff. We haven't really changed dramatically. There's been some major changes in the show over its lifetime, changing of the hosts, adding Mandy and Suzanne, changing our format. We've done various changes, but we've stuck with those changes for really long periods of time. Some of the stuff that we're doing now, we've been doing for almost a decade. And the top 10s have been here since episode 1.
Yep.
So that mixed with the fact that I'm doing top 10s and I'm doing stuff on the video channel all the time, it started making this feel like an extracurricular activity, which coincidentally it started as.
Yeah, yes.
But it didn't start as it was my board gaming thing I did, as opposed to now it's more board gaming things that I do. So my creative energy for this was kind of starting to fizzle to some degree. And my favorite thing my favorite podcasts that we've ever done have been with a live audience, with the ones we do in front of people. I love that. And the YouTube live stuff has really been invigorating to me because you see the response from people as you do stuff live. You know, I don't necessarily want to, respond to every comment that we see, but I like that aspect. And so this is an end to this podcast, but it's not an end. It's not an end. It's not like the Dice Tower is stopping.
Right.
The Dice Tower is continuing on. The YouTube channel's still planning to go strong. But I want to, like I said, I want to end this strongly. And a question I'm going to get asked a lot, and I knew this as soon as I do it, is, well, then why not just hand the reins over and move on? Do you not trust Eric? Well, yes, I do. But of all the things that I've done, this is my show. This is my baby. I started it in episode 1 with Joe, and I like to end it in episode 750 with Eric. A podcast that changes hosts completely, and several have done that successfully. It's not the same podcast. So, if Eric wants to start another podcast or did another podcast, I back him 100%, but I wouldn't. It would be something slightly different. So that's kind of why I'm ending this. But let's talk about the what. So the number, there's some various responses that we would get, and I think a very valid response that some of you are shouting right now at is, I only listen to the audio show. And I know that there's people like that because we get emails.
Yeah.
They listen to the audio show. So we plan to do another audio show. We'll release the details of that as time goes by. But me and Eric are working on something that will be on the YouTube channel, but with the mindset knowing it will become a podcast later.
Right.
Did I say that right?
I think that's the general plan. And something that's a different focus, not top 10 lists. We're hoping to do some more chat-related stuff, personalities and discussion over necessarily straight-up reviews.
Right. Eric is going to be the producer of this show. This is his baby. I really, again, we're not losing. Eric's going to be on board. The new thing I do, I'm not looking for another co-host. I mean, I have tons of co-hosts on the YouTube shows, but the audio thing would be Eric. Mandy and Suzanne are going to still be doing Apptastic reviews, they said on our thing. Maybe they'll start other stuff up. We'll have to see how that works out. This particular feed here that you're subscribed to his Dice Tower channel, I'm going to leave it open. I'll pay for it. And if I'm not going to say this will never come back, who knows? I'm also, if we do start another audio podcast, we'll post a note out here about it. That way you can find out about it. And other questions, if you have them in the forums, go ahead and ask them. But yelling at me that this is the only thing about Dice Tower you like, I appreciate that, but I can't let that hold me hostage to keep doing it the rest of my life. I want to be good at what I do. I think sometimes changes are necessary, but I've been kind of coming into the Dice Tower almost dragging my feet sometimes. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be the person who's going through the motions. I like putting a show on that's fun to do. On the YouTube channel, as soon as a show stops becoming fun, I stop doing it. Because why do something I don't enjoy? I'm not saying this isn't fun. I mean, working with Eric is a nightmare, of course. No, working with Eric has been fantastic. But I think, you know what? I'm proud. I'm proud of the 750 episodes. I really am. I'm proud of the different people who've been on my show. Some of them have gone off and started their own podcasts. Some of them, they went off and started and became famous orchestral composers in their native countries of Germany. There's been a lot of different people over the years that have been part of this. So to that end, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to tell me that you're not happy with the decision. I get it. But I do ask that nothing's going to change here. Eric is a part-time employee of the Dice Tower. That will continue. He'll be doing other things. That will be the YouTube channel and this new podcast thing that we're starting. Give us at least a month or two in between, for some transitional periods and things like that. Mm-hmm. But also, if you would like to send us an audio clip that's not overly long, we might play it in one of our final episodes. So you can just send those to tom@dicetower.com. Just send me that stuff, and I'll then give it to Eric. But I want to listen to all those things too. And again, we'll answer these questions in the forums and such. So there's no lightning bolt moment here, folks. You're not like, well, what caused Tom to do this? This has been something coming along. I think, Eric, you could back me up saying that I've kind of been hedging towards this for a while.
I've kept him going for a while, folks. But yes, it's time.
I was floating towards this a year ago.
The Dice Tower podcast has been around for 16 years. I've been around for 12 of those. And that's a pretty long time to be doing a show. And while I do appreciate the familiarity of sort of, we've got our routine. We know how to put a show together and make this work. I do appreciate that there will be some new challenges which can bring in just a new life to what I do for the Dice Tower. And so while I'm a little scared about what's coming up, I am excited about what these new opportunities are going to bring.
Yeah, so there you go, folks. Either way, we're going to keep working and putting these last episodes out. There's a possibility. I want to say in 10 weeks we're done, but there's a possibility there's a week off somewhere in here just because the holidays are about to approach upon us and different things like that. Mm-hmm. Even now we're recording this and Eric's like, hang up, I need to go to PAX.
Yes.
But thanks for listening to the show. We're going to keep going. And again, I would love to hear from you. I especially love, if you're one of those contributors from way back in the day, I'd love to hear from some of you. If you came on at episode 1, but if you came on at episode 239 and you're like, wait a minute, what? 739. And I want to say, there's a lot more thanks I want to give, but that will happen. Some of that will happen in episode 750. So I'm very much appreciative of everybody. I'm appreciative of you, but there's more going on. Meanwhile, turn this podcast off and go watch the Winter Spectacular. Anyway, I think we're done here. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 740, was recorded on December 8th, 2021. Mandy and Suzanne are with you next week, and in 2 weeks, Geoff joins Tom and me for a look back at the year in gaming. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. If a catastrophic event has become more than you can handle, find out how we can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with assistance from Rob Searing, Chris Yee, Mike DeLisio, and Roy Kennedy. Our no-hitters are provided by Pitcher Perfect. Timothy Pinkham composed our theme, and hosting is provided by Game Nerds, your all-in-one solution for all your nerdy needs at GameNerdsWithAZ.com. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at tom@dicetower.com or eric@dicetower.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower network, including Rolling Dice and Taking Names, All the Bits, This Game is Broken, Blue Peg, Pink Peg, The Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast, and Dice Tower Tonight. Find your next favorite at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. Surprise?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That was like a combo.